She stood there on crutches, one leg gone, birthday tears threatening to spill, rejected by every table in the cafe, except one. The single father didn't know that saying yes to a broken stranger would unravel his carefully rebuilt life, cost him his daughter's fairy tale dream, and force him to choose between a safe past and a terrifying future. This is the story of how a simple question, "Can I share this table?" became the most dangerous 5 words Evan Hart ever heard. Stay until the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The rain had been falling on Portland for 3 days straight, the kind of relentless Pacific Northwest downpour that turned the streets into rivers of gray and made the whole world feel like it was dissolving at the edges. Inside the Cornerstone Cafe on Morrison Street, the windows were fogged with the breath of Saturday morning refugees, people who'd fled their cold apartments for the promise of coffee and the warmth of strangers pressed close together. Evan Hart sat at his usual corner table, the one positioned perfectly so he could watch both the door and his 6-year-old daughter, Jamie, who was currently conducting an animated conversation with her hot chocolate. She'd given the marshmallows names. This one's Mr. Floaty, and that one's Princess Melt, and was explaining their tragic love story with the kind of earnest drama only a first grader could muster. "Daddy, are you even listening?" Jamie's voice cut through his distraction. Evan blinked, pulling his attention back from the window where he'd been watching the rain trace patterns down the glass. "Of course, sweetheart. Princess Melt just discovered that Mr. Floaty is actually her long-lost brother, right?" "Daddy, no!" Jamie's face scrunched up in that expression of patient exasperation she'd somehow mastered despite being only 6 years old. "That was last week's story. Today they're getting married, but the evil coffee dragon wants to drink them before the ceremony. My apologies. That's much more serious." Evan reached across the table to adjust Jamie's crooked headband, the purple one with the sparkly butterfly that she insisted on wearing every single Saturday. "Should I call the marshmallow police?" Jamie giggled, that bright bell-like sound that still had the power to unknot something tight in Evan's chest. These Saturday mornings were sacred, had been for 2 years now, ever since the divorce papers were signed and his whole life had been carved neatly down the middle. Nora had taken the house in Lake Oswego, the friends they'd made as a couple, and the illusion that their family would stay intact. Evan had taken Jamie every other week, this corner table at the Cornerstone Cafe, and a 1-bedroom apartment where his daughter's art covered every wall like bright Band-Aids over cracks. "Daddy, there's a sad lady at the door." Evan followed Jamie's gaze. Through the crush of bodies waiting for tables, he could just make out a young woman near the entrance. She was balanced on crutches, her right leg ending just below the knee, her left foot planted unsteadily on the wet floor. She wore jeans with the right leg pinned up, a rain-soaked jacket that hung too large on her thin frame, and an expression that Evan recognized immediately, the careful blankness of someone who'd learned to hide how much everything hurt. She was young, probably mid-20s, with dark hair plastered against her pale face and eyes that darted around the crowded cafe like a bird looking for a safe place to land. As Evan watched, she approached a table where 2 women sat with their laptops and designer coffee cups. Even from across the room, he could read her lips. "Excuse me, would you mind if I—" One of the women looked up, her expression shifting through surprise to discomfort, to something that might have been pity but looked more like distaste. She shook her head, gestured vaguely at the empty chairs around their table. Chairs clearly not being used for anything except holding purses and shopping bags. The young woman on crutches nodded, smiled that practiced smile of someone used to rejection, and moved on. Evan watched her approach 3 more tables, a couple who suddenly became very interested in their phones, a man who mumbled something about expecting friends, a group of teenagers who just stared until she backed away. Each rejection was polite, subtle, the kind of casual cruelty that people could pretend wasn't cruelty at all. "Why won't anyone let her sit down?" Jamie's voice was small, confused. "There's empty chairs everywhere." It was a good question, one that Evan didn't have a good answer for. Because people are uncomfortable around difference? Because the crutches and the missing leg made them think about fragility and their own vulnerability, and it was easier to look away? Because the cafe was crowded and she was alone, and somehow that combination made her invisible, undeserving of space? "I don't know, baby," he said quietly. The young woman had made it halfway around the cafe now, and Evan could see that her hands were shaking where they gripped the crutches. Her brave smile was starting to crack at the corners. She looked like someone who'd gathered every ounce of courage to walk through that door, who'd probably stood outside in the rain for 10 minutes, convincing herself that this time would be different, that this one time the world might be kind. She approached one more table, a man in a business suit who barely glanced up before shaking his head. And then she just stood there, in the middle of the cafe, surrounded by the sound of conversation and laughter and the hiss of the espresso machine. She stood there with water dripping from her jacket onto the worn wooden floor, and Evan watched her face do something complicated, watched hope and humiliation and exhaustion all fight for control. "Daddy," Jamie's hand found his across the table. "We have extra chairs." Evan looked at his daughter, 6 years old with Nora's green eyes and his own stubborn chin, wearing a purple butterfly headband and a chocolate mustache. 6 years old and already understanding something fundamental about kindness that half the adults in this room had forgotten. "You're absolutely right," he said. The young woman was turning toward the door now, ready to give up, to disappear back into the rain. Evan stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Excuse me," he called across the cafe. His voice carried farther than he'd intended, and several conversations stuttered to a stop. The young woman froze, her back to him, and Evan could see her shoulders tense like she was bracing for one more blow. She turned slowly, and up close, Evan could see that she'd been crying earlier. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her mascara slightly smudged. She couldn't have been more than 23 or 24, but she had the kind of weariness in her face that came from surviving things that should have killed you. "Can I share this table?" The words came out barely above a whisper, and Evan realized with a start that she'd practiced this question, had probably stood in front of a mirror rehearsing these 5 simple words because asking for something as basic as a place to sit had become an act of courage. "Please," Evan said, gesturing to the empty chairs. "We'd love the company." For a moment, she just stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Then her eyes, pale blue, Evan noticed, the color of winter sky, filled with tears that she blinked away quickly. "Thank you," she breathed, and navigated carefully between tables, her crutches finding purchase on the uneven floor. Jamie was already pulling out a chair, her face bright with the uncomplicated generosity of childhood. "Hi, I'm Jamie, and this is my daddy, Evan, and we're having Saturday morning adventures. Do you like hot chocolate?" "It's the best here. They put extra marshmallows in if you ask nice, and I named all of mine, but you can name yours different if you want." The young woman lowered herself into the chair with the careful movements of someone who'd learned to be mindful of every inch of space their body occupied. She propped her crutches against the table, shrugged out of her wet jacket, and Evan caught a glimpse of a tattoo on her inner wrist, a constellation of stars, or maybe birds in flight. "I'm Harper," she said, her voice steadier now. "Harper Lane, and I love hot chocolate." "Harper's a pretty name," Jamie announced with the confident authority of a first-grade expert on names. "It sounds like music, like a harp. Are you a musician?" A ghost of a real smile touched Harper's face. "No, but my mom used to say the same thing. She said I was named after the instrument because I was always making noise as a baby." "I make lots of noise too," Jamie said proudly. "Daddy says I could probably be heard from space if I really tried." "It's true," Evan confirmed, grateful for his daughter's chatter filling the awkward spaces. "We've considered renting her out to NASA as a communication device." Harper laughed, a small, surprised sound, like she'd forgotten how. Evan caught the server's attention and ordered another hot chocolate, watching as Harper's hands finally stopped trembling where they rested on the table. The cafe's noise had resumed around them, the moment of Evan's raised voice already forgotten in the Saturday morning bustle. But at their corner table, something fragile was taking shape, the beginning of a connection neither Evan nor Harper had been looking for. "So what brings you to the Cornerstone on this soggy Saturday?" Evan asked, trying to sound casual, normal, like he hadn't just watched her get rejected by half the cafe. Harper's fingers traced the rim of the empty water glass in front of her. "It's my birthday," she said quietly. 23 today." "It's your birthday?" Jamie's voice rose to that space communication level Evan had mentioned. "And you're spending it alone? That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Daddy, We have to fix this. Jamie, Evan started, but Harper was already shaking her head. It's okay, really. I wanted to come here specifically. This place. Her eyes moved around the cafe, taking in the mismatched chairs, the local art on the walls, the chalkboard menu with its curling script. My family used to come here every Saturday morning. It was our tradition. My parents, my little sister Olivia, and me. We'd sit at that table over there. She pointed to a spot by the window, currently occupied by a couple absorbed in their newspapers. And my dad would always order the same thing, black coffee, extra hot. My mom would get the lavender latte, and Olivia and I would fight over who got more marshmallows in their hot chocolate. She said it all in present tense at first, then caught herself, and Evan watched her face do something complicated as she corrected. They used to come here. We used to. The hot chocolate arrived, a mountain of whipped cream and marshmallows that would have made Jamie jealous if she hadn't been so focused on Harper's story. Did they move away? Jamie asked with a 6-year-old's innocent directness. Harper's hands wrapped around the warm mug, and Evan saw her knuckles go white. No, sweetheart. There was an accident 2 years ago. An old building downtown, the Riverside Apartments on 3rd Avenue, had a gas line problem. Nobody knew until it was too late. The explosion happened on a Saturday morning. Her voice had gone flat, mechanical, like she was reciting facts from a news report about someone else's life. We were all home. I was the only one who made it out. The silence at their table felt like a physical thing, pressing down. Jamie's eyes were huge, her hot chocolate forgotten. That's where I lost my leg, Harper continued, and Evan realized she needed to say it all at once, to get it out before she lost the nerve. Crushed under debris. The doctor said I was lucky. I was in a part of the building that collapsed slower, gave the firefighters time to reach me. My mom, my dad, my little sister Olivia, she was only 8. They didn't suffer. That's what everyone tells me, like it's supposed to be a comfort. They didn't suffer. But you did, Evan said quietly. Harper's eyes met his, and in them he saw a recognition that made his chest ache. The look of someone who'd discovered that the worst thing about surviving tragedy wasn't the grief itself, but the loneliness of it. The way people backed away from your pain like it might be contagious. Every day, she whispered. Every single day for 2 years. And the worst part? The absolute worst part is that I can't even remember the last thing I said to them. We were arguing that morning, me and Olivia, some stupid fight about her borrowing my headphones without asking, and I can't remember if I apologized before it happened. I can't remember if the last words I said to my baby sister were angry ones. Jamie slid out of her chair and crossed to Harper's side of the table before Evan could stop her. She climbed into the chair next to Harper and wrapped her small arms around the young woman's waist. I think you probably said you loved her, Jamie said, her voice muffled against Harper's shoulder. Because that's what sisters do. They fight about headphones and they say mean things sometimes, but they always love each other. My friend Sophia has a sister and they fight all the time. But Sophia told me once that she says, I love you every single night before bed, just in case. So even if you were mad about the headphones, I bet you said it that night before, or that morning, or maybe you didn't say it with words, but you said it in other ways, like making her breakfast or letting her have the last marshmallow in your hot chocolate. Harper made a sound that was half sob, half laugh, and pulled Jamie closer. You're very wise for 6 years old. I'm almost 7, Jamie corrected. My birthday's in February, and Daddy says I'm wise beyond my years, which I think means I'm basically an old person trapped in a kid body. Evan felt something crack open in his chest, watching his daughter comfort this stranger with the same fierce tenderness she showed to wounded birds and sad characters in storybooks. He'd been so focused on protecting Jamie from the sharp edges of the world, from the divorce, from disappointment, from the knowledge that sometimes families just fell apart, that he'd forgotten to notice how much she'd already learned about putting broken things back together. Thank you, Jamie, Harper said, and when she pulled back, her face was wet with tears, but somehow lighter. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a very long time. The cafe around them continued its Saturday morning rhythm. Orders called out, milk frothed, conversations rising and falling like waves. But at their corner table, time had slowed down, become something thicker, more significant. Evan watched Harper take a sip of her hot chocolate. watched her close her eyes like she was tasting memory itself. When she opened them, she looked directly at him. "I'm sorry," she said. "This is probably the worst birthday companion situation ever. Strange girl crashes your father-daughter morning, dumps her tragic backstory all over your table." "Stop," Evan said gently. "You're not crashing anything. And as far as birthdays go, I think we can do better than hospital-grade hot chocolate and tears." He glanced at Jamie, who was already nodding enthusiastically. "We usually spend Saturday mornings here, then go to Powell's bookstore, maybe the park if the rain lets up. You're welcome to join us, if you want. No pressure." Harper stared at him like he'd offered her something precious and impossible. "You don't even know me." "We know you're Harper Lane," Jamie counted on her fingers. "We know it's your birthday. We know you love hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. We know you had a sister named Olivia who borrowed your headphones. That's a lot of knowing. And besides, Daddy always says that strangers are just friends you haven't had cocoa with yet." "I've never said that," Evan protested. "You should have," Jamie replied with devastating logic. "It's a good saying. I'm going to trademark it." Harper laughed again, and this time it sounded more real, more whole. "I don't want to impose—" "You're not," Evan said firmly. He pulled out his phone, checked the time. "It's 9:47 now. We usually leave here around 10:30, hit Powell's by 11 and kick. The children's section is upstairs, and they have a reading corner that Jamie has declared her kingdom. There's also a cafe inside if you need more hot chocolate. Then lunch, wherever Jamie points to. She has a very sophisticated method of restaurant selection that involves closing her eyes and spinning around." "It's very scientific," Jamie added. "After lunch, if the rain stops, we go to Laurelhurst Park. There's a pond where Jamie likes to commune with the ducks and tell them her problems." "The ducks are very good listeners," Jamie said seriously. "Better than most people." Harper bit her lip, and Evan could see the war happening behind her eyes. The part of her that wanted to say yes, fighting with the part that had learned not to trust kindness, to expect disappointment, to protect herself by expecting nothing. "Why are you doing this?" she asked finally. "You could have ignored me like everyone else. You could have said your table was full, that you were waiting for someone. Why didn't you?" Evan thought about that question, really thought about it. He could have given her the easy answer, the polite one. Could have said something about common decency or basic human kindness. But Harper Lane had just handed them her tragedy wrapped in nothing but raw honesty, and she deserved the same in return. 2 years ago, he said slowly, my wife left me. Well, technically, we left each other. The divorce was mutual, civil, all those words people use when they want to pretend their heart isn't breaking. We'd been together since college, built a whole life together, had Jamie. And then one day we woke up and realized we'd become strangers who shared a mortgage and a daughter. He glanced at Jamie, who was drawing patterns in the foam of her hot chocolate, pretending not to listen while obviously absorbing every word. The day Nora moved out, I took Jamie to the park, this park, Laurelhurst. And we sat on a bench watching other families, other intact units, and I felt so completely alone. Like I was watching life through a window I couldn't figure out how to open. And this old man sat down next to us, complete stranger, started feeding the ducks, talking about the weather. Then he turned to me and said, the worst part about being broken is forgetting that other people are broken too. We're all just walking around with our cracks, pretending we're whole. Harper had gone very still, listening. He told me his wife had died 3 years earlier, cancer. He said for months after, he'd come to this park and sit on this bench, and people would walk past him like he was invisible, because grief makes people uncomfortable. It reminds them that bad things happen, that life is fragile, that any one of us could be the person sitting alone on the bench. Evan met Harper's eyes. Then one day, a little girl, couldn't have been more than 4, walked up to him and offered him half of her sandwich, peanut butter and jelly. Her mom tried to pull her away, but the girl insisted, and the old man said that sandwich tasted like hope, like remembering that kindness still existed. What happened to him? Harper asked softly. I don't know. We talked for about 20 minutes, then he left. I never saw him again. But I remember thinking, if I ever see someone who looks like I felt that day, like they're watching life through a window they can't open, I'm going to offer them a seat, a sandwich, a moment of not being invisible. Jamie had stopped pretending not to listen. She was looking at her father with those 2 wise eyes, and Evan realized that his daughter was learning something important about who he was, about what kind of man he wanted to be. "You reminded me of me," Evan said simply, standing there in the middle of this cafe, surrounded by people, completely alone. And I thought, not today. Today, someone sees you. Today, you get the seat. Harper pressed her hands to her face, shoulders shaking. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red but clear. "Okay," she said. "Okay, yes, I would love to spend my birthday with you and Jamie, if you're sure." "We're sure." Jamie bounced in her seat. "This is the best Saturday morning adventure ever. Daddy, can we sing happy birthday? Can we? Can we please?" "Jamie, I don't think Harper wants the entire cafe," but Jamie was already standing on her chair, her voice ringing out clear and true. "It's someone's birthday. Everyone has to sing." The cafe went quiet for a heartbeat, 50 strangers looking up from their coffee and conversations. Then, incredibly, someone joined in. One voice became two, became five, became a whole cafe full of people singing happy birthday to a young woman they'd never met, who half of them had rejected just minutes earlier. Harper covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming down her face as the song swelled around her. When it ended, the cafe erupted in applause, and Harper, broken, beautiful Harper Lane, laughed with a joy that sounded like it had been buried for 2 years and was only now finding its way back to the surface. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Evan caught Jamie as she jumped down from her chair, swung her in a circle, and felt something shift in his chest, something that had been locked tight since the divorce, since the old man on the bench, since the day he'd realized that being a single father meant navigating grief and hope in equal measure. Looking at Harper across the table, this stranger who was becoming less strange with every passing moment, Evan had the distinct feeling that his carefully ordered Saturday morning routine was about to get much more complicated. He had no idea how right he was. But in that moment, with Jamie chattering about birthday traditions and Harper smiling like the sun breaking through Portland clouds, Evan made a decision that would change all of their lives. He decided to keep saying yes, to one more coffee, to one more hour, to one more Saturday, to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, broken people could find each other in crowded cafes and build something new from their scattered pieces. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Inside, at a corner table marked by empty mugs and tear-stained napkins and the lingering echo of an impromptu birthday song, 3 people who'd been strangers an hour ago were becoming something else entirely. They were becoming the beginning of a story. And every story has to start somewhere. This one started with 5 words, "Can I share this table?" But what it really started with, what it really, truly began with, was the much harder question underneath. Can I share your life? Can I trust you not to look away? Can I believe that kindness isn't just a fluke, that humans can still be good, that broken things can heal? Can I risk hoping again? Evan finished his coffee, watched Jamie teach Harper the proper way to name marshmallows, by personality, not appearance, and thought, yes, you can share this table. Yes, you can trust me. Yes, we're all broken here. And yes, maybe especially yes, you can hope. Because that's what Saturday mornings were for, weren't they? For hot chocolate and second chances. For strangers becoming friends. For remembering that the world could still surprise you with its goodness if you paid attention. If you kept your corner table. If you offered your seat. If you said yes when every instinct told you to protect yourself. To stay safe. To not get involved in someone else's heartbreak. Evan said yes. And everything, absolutely everything, changed because of it. Powell's Books occupied an entire city block on Burnside Street, a maze of rooms color-coded by genre, where the smell of old paper and possibility hung thick in the air. By the time they arrived at 11:15, the rain had softened to a persistent mist, and Harper had relaxed enough to laugh at Jamie's running commentary on every storefront they passed. "That's where Daddy bought me the ugly sweater for Christmas," Jamie pointed at a vintage clothing shop. "It had a cat on it wearing sunglasses. I loved it so much I wore it for 3 days straight, until Daddy said it was starting to develop its own ecosystem." "I believe my exact words were biological hazard," Evan corrected, holding the bookstore's heavy door open for both of them. Harper navigated the entrance with practiced ease, her crutches finding purchase on the worn wooden floors. Inside, the bookstore stretched out like a labyrinth, ceiling-high shelves creating narrow corridors that invited getting lost. The Saturday morning crowd was already thick, college students claiming armchairs, parents corralling toddlers, serious readers moving through the stacks with the focused intensity of hunters. "The children's section is upstairs," Evan said. "Fair warning, Jamie has been known to disappear into the fantasy shelves for hours. I once found her sitting on the floor surrounded by 17 books, all of them open, trying to read them simultaneously." "I was comparing dragon species," Jamie said defensively. "It's important research, Daddy. You can't just assume all dragons breathe fire. Some of them breathe ice or lightning, or in one book they breathe dreams, which I think is much more interesting than regular fire." They climbed the stairs, Jamie bounding ahead with the boundless energy of childhood, while Harper took each step carefully, Evan staying close without hovering. At the top, the children's section opened into a bright space with low tables, colorful rugs, and a reading nook built to look like a treehouse. "This is my kingdom," Jamie announced, spreading her arms wide. "I rule over all the books here. It's a very important job." "What kind of ruler are you, Si?" Harper asked, settling into one of the cushioned chairs. "Benevolent? Tyrannical?" Jamie considered this seriously. "Mostly benevolent, but I have strict rules about people who dog-ear pages. That's a crime punishable by exile." "A fair and just monarch," Harper said solemnly. Evan watched them together, his daughter, who'd been wary of strangers since the divorce, now chattering away like Harper was a favorite aunt. And Harper, who'd walked into the cafe looking like she was barely holding herself together, now smiling with something approaching real happiness. The transformation in both of them felt significant, though Evan couldn't quite articulate why. "I'm going to show Harper the best books," Jamie declared, already moving toward the shelves. "The ones that make you cry, but in a good way, not in a sad way. There's a difference, you know." "I do know," Harper said quietly, and Evan caught the weight in those 3 words. For the next hour, they wandered through the children's section, Jamie pulling books from shelves and thrusting them into Harper's hands with passionate recommendations. "This one's about a girl who can talk to trees, and this one's about a boy who lives in a lighthouse and finds a mermaid, and this one's my favorite. It's about a fox who loses his tail but learns that he's still brave without it." Harper took each book carefully, reading back covers and first pages while Jamie provided director's commentary. Evan hung back, ostensibly browsing the picture books, but mostly just observing. There was something about watching Harper with his daughter that made his chest feel tight. The gentle way she listened, really listened, to Jamie's enthusiastic rambling, the way she asked questions that showed she was actually interested, not just being polite. "Harper, what kinds of books do you like?" Jamie asked eventually, flopping down on one of the floor cushions with her current pile of selections. Harper sat carefully on a nearby chair, her crutches propped against the armrest. "When I was younger, I loved fantasy, stories about people going on quests, finding magic, becoming heroes. My sister and I used to—" She paused, and Evan saw her make the conscious decision to continue. "Olivia and I used to act out our favorite books. We'd turn our living room into whatever world we were reading about that week. Narnia, Hogwarts, Middle-earth. She always wanted to be the brave knight, and I always ended up being the dragon." "Were you a good dragon?" Jamie asked. "I was an excellent dragon," Harper said with mock pride. "I had a very convincing roar, and I hoarded all the throw pillows as treasure." "That sounds like the best game ever," Jamie breathed. "Did Olivia defeat you?" Harper's smile turned bittersweet. "Sometimes. Other times we'd decide the dragon and the knight should team up instead. We'd fight invisible monsters together, bad guys that only we could see. Olivia had this plastic sword she got at a Renaissance fair, and she'd wave it around like it was Excalibur. She was fearless." The way Harper talked about her sister, present tense slipping into past tense, memory and grief braided together, made Evan's throat tight. He moved closer, sitting on the floor near Jamie. "She sounds like she was an amazing kid," he said. "She was." Harper's voice was steady, but her eyes were bright. "She wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up. She was always bringing home injured animals, birds with broken wings, a squirrel that fell out of a tree, once a very angry raccoon that we had to call animal control about, My mom used to joke that we were running an unauthorized wildlife hospital. What about your parents? Evan asked gently. What were they like? Harper was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the spine of the book in her lap, the one about the tailless fox. My dad was a high school English teacher. He's the one who got me into books, who taught me that stories could save you when real life got too hard. He used to read to us every night, even when Olivia and I were probably too old for bedtime stories. He'd do all the voices, act out the dramatic parts. He was ridiculous and wonderful. And your mom? Jamie prompted softly. My mom was a social worker. She spent her days trying to keep families together, trying to help people who were drowning. She came home exhausted every night, but she never let us see how much it weighed on her. She had this thing she used to say, "We're all just doing our best with the broken pieces we've been given." I didn't really understand it when I was younger, but now, Harper's voice caught. Now I get it. We're all walking around with our cracks, trying to hold ourselves together. Evan felt something click into place, a recognition that went bone deep. That's almost exactly what the old man in the park said to me, the one I told you about. Harper looked up, meeting his eyes. Maybe that's just the truth everyone eventually learns. We're all broken. The question is whether we try to hide it or whether we let other people see the cracks. I think the cracks are the best part, Jamie announced with 6-year-old wisdom. Daddy, remember when I dropped my favorite mug and it shattered and you glued it back together with that gold stuff? And you said it was even more beautiful now because you could see where it had been broken. Kintsugi, Evan said. Japanese art of repairing pottery with gold. The philosophy is that the breakage and repair become part of the object's history, not something to hide. Harper stared at him, then at Jamie, then down at her hands. I've never thought about it that way. I've spent 2 years trying to hide my cracks, trying to pretend I'm still whole. But you are whole, Jamie said earnestly. You're just whole in a different shape now, like my mug. It's still a mug. It still holds hot chocolate. It just has gold lines showing where it was sad, and now those lines are the prettiest part. Evan watched Harper's face crumple and rebuild itself, watched her blink back tears that she didn't quite manage to contain. Without thinking, he reached out and squeezed her hand. A brief connection, there and gone, and Harper squeezed back. Thank you, she whispered. Both of you. I didn't know how much I needed to hear that. The moment stretched between them, weighted with something Evan couldn't quite name. Then Jamie broke it with her characteristic perfect timing. Harper, you should come have lunch with us every Saturday. Not just today, every Saturday forever. We could be like a Saturday morning club, except also Saturday afternoon, and maybe sometimes Saturday evening if we're having a really good time. Daddy, can Harper join our Saturday tradition? Please, please, please? Evan opened his mouth, not sure what he was going to say, but Harper spoke first. Jamie, sweetie, your dad and I just met a few hours ago. I'm sure he has his reasons for keeping Saturdays just for you two. Actually, Evan heard himself say, I think that's a great idea. Both Harper and Jamie turned to look at him, Jamie with delight, Harper with cautious hope. You do? Harper asked. Evan surprised himself with how much he meant it. Yeah, I mean, if you want to, no pressure. But these Saturday traditions, they started because I wanted Jamie to have something stable, something she could count on after the divorce. But maybe traditions don't have to be rigid. Maybe they can grow to include other people. Are you sure? Harper's voice was small. I don't want to intrude on your time with Jamie. You're not intruding, Evan said firmly. You're being invited. There's a difference. Jamie's right. You're part of the Saturday morning club now. Meetings every week, mandatory hot chocolate, democratic voting on which bookstore sections to browse. Jamie is president, obviously. Obviously, Harper agreed, a real smile breaking across her face. What's your role? Chief marshmallow distributor and holder of the credit card, Evan said solemnly. And what's my role? Jamie considered this with the gravity of someone assigning a position of great importance. You're the keeper of stories, the one who remembers what books are good for crying in a good way, and what games to play when the world is too loud, and how to be brave when you're scared. Harper pressed a hand to her mouth, and Evan could see her fighting to hold it together. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I would be honored to be the keeper of stories. They spent another 30 minutes in the children's section, Jamie finally selecting 4 books that met her exacting standards while Harper and Evan browsed nearby. At one point, standing in front of the young adult shelves, Harper turned to him. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did your marriage end? You said it was mutual, but—" She hesitated. "You don't have to answer. I'm being nosy." Evan considered deflecting, giving her the polite version. But Harper had been nothing but honest with them all morning, and she deserved the same. "We were 20 when we met," he said slowly. "College sweethearts, the whole cliché. Nora was studying architecture, I was in engineering. We had this vision of who we'd be together, this perfect blueprint. Nice house, good jobs, 2.5 kids, golden retriever, white picket fence. And we checked all the boxes. Got married at 24, bought the house at 26, had Jamie at 27. "That sounds perfect," Harper said quietly. "It was. On paper." Evan pulled a book off the shelf without looking at the title. "But somewhere along the way, we stopped being partners and started being roommates who co-managed a child. We'd sit at dinner and realize we had nothing to talk about except Jamie's schedule and who was picking up the dry cleaning. The intimacy just evaporated. And the worst part? We were both too polite to acknowledge it. We kept pretending everything was fine until one day Nora came home and said, 'I don't think we're in love anymore.' Were you angry?" "No." "That's what made it so sad. I was relieved. Because she was right. We cared about each other, we respected each other, but that spark, whatever makes two people want to build a life together instead of just sharing space, it was gone. Maybe it had always been there. Maybe we'd been playing house our whole relationship, acting out roles we thought we were supposed to fill." Harper was quiet, absorbing this. "Do you regret it? The marriage, I mean?" "No." Evan surprised himself with how quickly he answered. "Because of Jamie, and because I learned something important. You can do everything right and still end up wrong. You can check every box and still be unhappy. The trick is figuring out what actually matters, not what you think is supposed to matter." "And what actually matters?" Evan looked across the room to where Jamie was sprawled on a cushion, reading one of her selected books with absolute focus, her tongue poking out the corner of her mouth the way it always did when she was concentrating. "That," he said simply. "Moments like this. Real connection. People who see you, really see you, and don't look away. It's rarer than you'd think." Harper followed his gaze. "She's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have her. She's the one who keeps me honest. Kids don't let you hide behind polite fictions. They ask the hard questions. They call you out when you're being fake." "Is that why you said yes when I asked to share your table?" Harper asked. "Because Jamie would have called you out if you'd said no?" Evan shook his head. "I said yes because I wanted to. But I'm grateful that Jamie's presence made it easier to be the person I want to be. She's my conscience, in the best way." They collected Jamie and her books, checked out at the register, and stepped back into the Portland afternoon. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the city washed clean and smelling of wet pavement impossibility. "Lunch?" Evan suggested. Jamie closed her eyes, spun in a circle with her arm extended, and when she stopped, she was pointing directly at a small Vietnamese restaurant across the street. "The scientific method has spoken," Evan declared. Over bowls of pho and spring rolls, the conversation flowed easier than it had any right to. Harper talked about her job as a freelance graphic designer, work she could do from home, which had been essential after the accident. Jamie talked about first-grade politics with the deadly seriousness of a war correspondent. Evan found himself laughing more than he had in months. "So there's 3 main factions in our class," Jamie explained, using her chopsticks to draw invisible diagrams in the air. "The princess group, the dinosaur group, and the independent agents. I'm an independent agent because I refuse to align myself with any faction. It's a very lonely position, but someone has to maintain neutrality." "Very diplomatic," Harper said, clearly trying not to laugh. "That's what Ms. Chen says. She says I should consider a career in the United Nations." "First grade is basically international politics," Evan agreed. After lunch, they walked to Laurelhurst Park, Jamie skipping ahead on the path while Evan matched his pace to Harper's. The park was dotted with Saturday afternoon visitors, joggers, families, a group playing frisbee on the wet grass. "I haven't been here since before," Harper said quietly. before the accident. My family used to come here sometimes. Dad would bring a book and read under that tree. She pointed to a large oak near the pond. And Mom would walk with Olivia, teaching her the names of birds and flowers. I'd usually have my headphones in, ignoring everyone, being a typical moody teenager who thought she was too cool for family time. Her voice cracked on the last words, and Evan stopped walking. Harper, I took it all for granted, she continued, the words pouring out like she'd been holding them back for 2 years. Every single moment. I thought we had forever. I thought there would always be more Saturdays, more coffee shop visits, more stupid arguments about headphones. And then in one instant, it was all gone. Everything. And I'm still here, and I don't understand why. Why did I survive? Why me and not Olivia? She was 8 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. She was good and pure, and she wanted to save animals. And I'm just me. I'm nobody special. I'm just a person who designs logos for small businesses and spends most of her time alone and can't even remember the last thing she said to her sister. She was crying now, really crying, the kind of tears that had been building for months or years. Evan looked around frantically for Jamie and spotted her by the pond, safely absorbed in feeding ducks with breadcrumbs some other family had left behind. Harper, look at me. Evan's voice was gentle but firm. When she turned, he continued. There is no why. That's the thing that nobody tells you about tragedy. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't have meaning. Bad things happen to good people, and good people die, and other people survive, and none of it is fair or just or part of some grand plan. It just is. Then how do you live with it? Harper's voice was ragged. How do you wake up every day knowing that the universe is random and cruel, and everyone you love could disappear in an instant? You live with it by living, Evan said. By showing up, by saying yes to things even when you're scared, by sharing your table with strangers in coffee shops, by feeding ducks in parks with people who've become friends, by refusing to let grief be the only story you tell about yourself. Harper wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't know if I'm brave enough for that. You walked into a cafe today knowing you might get rejected by every person there, and you asked for a seat anyway. That's the bravest thing I've seen in a long time. I almost didn't come. I stood outside in the rain for 20 minutes, talking myself out of it, telling myself it was stupid, that the cafe couldn't bring my family back, that I was just torturing myself by returning to the scene of happy memories. But you came anyway. But I came anyway, Harper echoed. And you said yes. And Jamie sang happy birthday. And now I'm standing in a park I haven't visited in 2 years. And I'm crying, but I'm also here. I'm still here. You're still here, Evan confirmed. And that matters. You matter. Something passed between them in that moment. Not romantic, not yet, but a recognition, a seeing, the kind of deep acknowledgement that happens rarely when two people look at each other and understand, we are the same kind of broken. Daddy, Harper! Jamie's voice rang across the park. The ducks want to meet you. This one's named Gerald, and he's very distinguished. They walked to the pond together, and Harper told Gerald the distinguished duck about her day, while Jamie provided translation services for the other ducks, who apparently had opinions about everything from the weather to the quality of the breadcrumbs. By the time they left the park, the sun was breaking through the clouds, painting Portland in shades of gold. They walked Harper to her car, a small sedan with a handicap placard hanging from the mirror, and stood in the parking lot, suddenly awkward now that the day was ending. Thank you, Harper said for what must have been the 20th time. For everything. For the table, for the books, for lunch, for seeing me. Same time next Saturday? Jamie asked hopefully. Harper looked at Evan, a question in her eyes. Same time, he confirmed. 10 o'clock. Corner table. It's tradition now. Tradition, Harper repeated like she was testing out the word. Then she smiled, and it reached her eyes. Okay, yes, I'll be there. They watched her drive away, Jamie waving enthusiastically until the car disappeared around a corner. Daddy? Jamie said as they walked to their own car. Yeah, sweetheart? I really like Harper. She's sad, but she's also funny, and she listens good, not like adults who just pretend to listen while they're looking at their phones. She does listen well, Evan agreed. Do you think we made her birthday better? Evan thought about Harper's face in the cafe when the whole room sang to her, the way she'd held Jamie's book recommendations like they were precious, how she'd cried in the park but also laughed, both emotions equally real, equally valid. Yeah, Bug, I think we did. Good. Jamie climbed into her car seat, already reaching for one of her new books. Daddy, can broken people be friends with other broken people, even if their cracks don't match up exactly? Evan paused in the act of buckling her in. What do you mean? Well, you and Harper are both sad about different things. You're sad because Mommy left, and Harper's sad because her family died. Those are different kinds of sad, but you both have cracks. So can you still understand each other even if the cracks are different shapes? Leave it to a 6-year-old to ask the questions philosophers spent lifetimes pondering. I think, Evan said carefully, that broken people understand each other better than anyone else because they know what it feels like to hurt. The cracks don't have to match. They just have to be real. And when you're real with someone else who's real, that's when you can really see each other. Jamie nodded like this made perfect sense. That's what I thought. I think Harper needed to meet us, and maybe we needed to meet her too. Maybe we did, Bug. Maybe we did. That night, after Jamie was in bed, Evan sat in his small living room and thought about the strange, unexpected gift of the day. He'd woken up that morning expecting a normal Saturday, coffee, cocoa, books, maybe the park if the weather cooperated. He'd expected routine, safety, the comfortable predictability of a tradition carved out in the aftermath of divorce. Instead, he'd met Harper Lane. And now there was a crack in his carefully constructed life. Not a bad crack, but an opening. A space where something new might grow. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Harper. Jamie gave me your number. Hope that's okay. Just wanted to say thank you again for today. It was the best birthday I've had in 2 years. See you next Saturday. H. Evan stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Glad you joined us. Same table next week. Fair warning, Jamie's already planning your next birthday. I believe she mentioned something about a dragon costume. E. The response came quickly. I have an excellent roar. Prepare yourself. H. Evan smiled at his phone like an idiot, then caught himself and put it down. This was nothing, just a new friend, someone to add to their Saturday routine. Nothing more complicated than that. But even as he told himself this, even as he tried to convince himself that he was just being kind, just being a good human, Evan knew the truth. Something had shifted today. The question was whether that shift would bring them closer together or tear them apart. He didn't have an answer yet, but for the first time in 2 years, he wanted to find out. The Saturdays multiplied like pages in a story neither of them had planned to write. One became 2, became 5, became 3 months of corner tables and hot chocolate, and the comfortable rhythm of people learning how to be in each other's lives. Harper showed up that second Saturday with a visible nervousness that melted the moment Jamie launched herself across the cafe in greeting. By the fourth Saturday, she was arriving early, claiming their table before Evan and Jamie even walked through the door. By the 8th, she knew their orders by heart and had them waiting. Extra marshmallows for Jamie, black coffee for Evan, and a lavender latte for herself that she swore was better than the one her mother used to order. You're building your own tradition, Evan observed one morning in late September, watching Harper arrange the drinks just so, Jamie's hot chocolate in the center, flanked by the adult beverages like protective sentries. Is that allowed? Harper asked, that familiar flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. Or am I overstepping? Harper, you've been here every Saturday for 3 months. I think we're past the overstepping phase. You're practically furniture at this point. She threw a sugar packet at him. Furniture. That's romantic. The word hung in the air for a beat too long. Romantic. And they both looked away quickly, suddenly fascinated by their respective beverages. Because that was the thing neither of them was acknowledging. Somewhere between the second Saturday and the 20th, something had shifted. The friendship that had formed in grief and kindness was developing edges, complications, the kinds of feelings that made Evan catch himself staring at the way Harper tucked her hair behind her ear, or the sound of her laugh when Jamie said something particularly absurd, but they didn't talk about it. They stayed safely in the realm of Saturday traditions and text messages about book recommendations, and the occasional weeknight coffee that they both pretended was casual and meaningless. Then the Saturdays started expanding. After Powell's and lunch in the park, they'd find reasons to keep going. A new ice cream place Jamie wanted to try, a street fair in Northwest Portland, a matinee showing of some animated movie that gave them an excuse to sit in the dark and share popcorn while Jamie provided running commentary on the plot. The dragon should team up with the princess, Jamie whispered loudly during one such movie. They'd be much better as partners than enemies. Why does everyone always assume they have to fight? Because conflict is the engine of narrative, Harper whispered back. But you're right. The best stories are about enemies becoming friends. Evan felt something twist in his chest at those words. Enemies becoming friends. And wondered what that made him and Harper. They'd never been enemies. They'd been strangers who became friends. Friends who were maybe becoming something else. Something neither of them had the courage to name. By October, Harper had a key to Evan's apartment. It had happened almost accidentally. Jamie had forgotten her jacket after an impromptu Tuesday dinner, and Harper had offered to drop it off the next morning before Evan left for work. Then it became easier to just let her have a key for emergencies. Then she was stopping by on Wednesday evenings to help Jamie with an art project. Then she was there for Friday movie nights, which had somehow become a new tradition alongside the Saturday morning routine. "Is Miss Harper your girlfriend?" Jamie asked one night after Harper had left, casual as anything, while Evan tucked her into bed. Evan nearly dropped the storybook he was holding. "What? No. We're friends. You know that. But you smile different when she texts you, and you get that weird look on your face when she talks about anything, like you're trying to memorize what she's saying. And last week at the park, you held her hand for a whole minute, and you both pretended it didn't happen." She was having trouble on the uneven path. I was helping her balance. "For a whole minute," Jamie repeated, those two wise eyes seeing straight through him. "And you looked at her the way Prince Philip looks at Princess Aurora in Sleeping Beauty, right before he kisses her awake." "I think you're reading too much into things, Bug." Jamie shrugged, but Evan could see she didn't believe him. Hell, he didn't believe himself. But acknowledging what was happening, really happening, felt dangerous. Like speaking it aloud would force them to confront it, and confrontation meant risk, and risk meant the possibility of losing what they'd built. So they didn't speak it. They let it grow in the spaces between words, in accidental touches and lingering glances, and the way Harper's face lit up every Saturday morning when she spotted them walking through the cafe door. Then November arrived, and with it, the beginning of the end of their careful pretending. Evan's phone rang on a Wednesday evening, Jamie's name lighting up the screen. But it wasn't Jamie's voice when he answered. "Evan, it's Nora." His ex-wife's voice was tight with forced cheerfulness. "Jamie wanted to call you, and I thought, well, I have some news. Can you talk?" A cold feeling settled in Evan's stomach. "What's wrong? Is Jamie okay?" "She's fine. Great, actually. We're both fine. Better than fine." Nora took a breath. "I'm moving back to Portland. Got offered a position at a firm downtown starting in January. I'll be able to see Jamie much more regularly. Isn't that wonderful?" The word wonderful echoed strangely in Evan's ears. Wonderful. His ex-wife, who'd moved to Seattle after the divorce for a better opportunity, was coming back. The woman he'd once loved, once married, once built a whole life with, was returning to the city, to their daughter's everyday existence, to... "That's great, Nora," he managed. "Jamie must be excited." "She is. She's already planning all the things we'll do together." A pause waited with something Evan couldn't quite identify. "Actually, Evan, there's something else. Something I wanted to discuss with you, but maybe not over the phone. Could we meet for coffee? Maybe this Saturday?" Saturday. Their Saturday. His and Jamie's and Harper's Saturday. "I usually have plans Saturday mornings. Please, Evan. It's important. It's about us. About our family." Our family. The words landed like stones in still water, sending ripples in every direction. "Okay," he heard himself say. "Saturday. But not the morning. Afternoon, maybe 2 o'clock? Perfect. I'll text you the location. And Evan, I'm glad we're doing this. I think we have a lot to talk about." The call ended and Evan stood in his kitchen holding his phone, feeling like the ground had just shifted beneath his feet. Before he could process what had happened, Another text came through. This one from Harper. Jamie just called me. She's over the moon about her mom moving back. She said something about her parents maybe getting back together. I told her that's between you and Nora, but are you okay? Evan stared at the message. Jamie had called Harper. When had his daughter and Harper started having their own relationship, separate from him? When had Harper become the person Jamie called to share exciting news? He typed back, I'm fine. We'll talk Saturday? The response came immediately. Of course. Corner table, 10 a.m., always. H. But Saturday felt different from the moment Evan and Jamie walked through the cafe door. Harper was already there, 2 hot chocolates and a coffee waiting. But her smile didn't reach her eyes, and there was a tension in her shoulders that hadn't been there last week. Jamie, oblivious to the undercurrents, launched into a breathless recap of all the plans she'd made with her mother. And Mommy says we can go to the zoo every month, and she wants to take me to the Children's Museum, and maybe we can have dinner together sometimes, all 3 of us, like a real family again. Harper's hand tightened around her mug. Evan watched her watch Jamie, saw the moment something shuddered behind her eyes. That sounds wonderful, sweetie, Harper said, her voice bright and brittle. You must be so happy. I am. I mean, I love our Saturdays with you, Miss Harper, but having Mommy back means everything can be like it was before. Before the divorce, before everything got sad. Daddy, don't you think that would be amazing? Evan looked at his daughter, her hopeful face, her absolute faith that broken things could be unbroken, that families torn apart could be stitched back together, and felt something crack in his chest. Bug, it's more complicated than that. But you and Mommy loved each other once, right? And people who love each other should be together. That's how all the stories work. The prince and princess always end up together. Real life isn't a fairy tale, Evan said gently. But it could be, Jamie insisted. If everyone just tried harder, if you both just remembered why you fell in love in the first place. Harper stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I need to use the restroom. Excuse me. She grabbed her crutches and moved away from the table with more speed than grace, and Evan watched her go, his stomach twisting with a complicated knot of emotions he couldn't untangle. Did I say something wrong? Jamie asked, her confidence faltering. No, sweetheart. You're excited, and that's okay. But Harper... He paused, trying to find the right words. Harper's situation is different from yours. She lost her family in a way that can't be fixed. Hearing about families getting back together might be hard for her. Understanding dawned slowly on Jamie's face. Oh no, I didn't think... Daddy, I made her sad. You didn't mean to, but maybe when she comes back we can talk about something else, okay? But when Harper returned, she was wearing that careful mask Evan had seen on the first day they met, the brave smile that hid everything real underneath. And she kept it on for the rest of the morning, through Powell's and lunch and even the park, maintaining a cheerful distance that felt like miles. When they finally said goodbye in the parking lot, Harper's hug was brief, her smile tight. See you next week, she said, but it sounded like a question. Harper, wait. Evan caught her arm gently. Are you okay? Really? She looked at him for a long moment, and he could see her weighing what to say, whether to be honest or maintain the pretense that everything was fine. I'm happy for Jamie, she said finally. I am. She deserves to have both her parents in her life. She deserves... Her voice caught. She deserves her fairy tale. Even if... She stopped, shook her head. I'll see you next Saturday, Evan. She drove away before he could respond, and Evan was left standing in the parking lot with the sinking feeling that something irreparable had just happened. His meeting with Nora that afternoon confirmed it. They met at a coffee shop in Northwest Portland, neutral territory. Nora looked good, better than she had at the end of their marriage. Her hair was shorter, styled differently. She wore confidence like new clothing, and when she smiled at him across the table, it held a warmth he hadn't seen in years. You look well, she said. So do you. Seattle's been good to you? It has. The job was great, the apartment was great, but... She wrapped her hands around her latte. It wasn't home, and I've been doing a lot of therapy, Evan. A lot of thinking about what went wrong between us, why I ran instead of fighting for our marriage. A warning bell started ringing in Evan's head. Nora. Let me finish, please. She leaned forward. I left because I was scared. Scared that we'd become our parents, trapped in a marriage that was more obligation than love. But I realize now that I didn't give us a real chance. I left at the first sign of trouble instead of doing the hard work. We both left, Evan said carefully. The divorce was mutual. Was it, though? Or did you just agree because I asked? Because that's what we did, right? We were so busy being polite, being civil, that we never fought for anything. Her eyes were bright. I'm back now. I'm here for Jamie, yes, but also, Evan, what if we tried again? What if we gave us another chance, a real chance this time? The words landed like physical blows. Evan sat back, his mind racing. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. We're older now, wiser. We know what didn't work before. We could build something better, something real. For Jamie's sake, if nothing else. She wants this so badly, Evan. You should have seen her face when I suggested it might be possible. You told Jamie we might get back together? Evan's voice rose despite his efforts to control it. Nora, you can't just put that idea in her head without talking to me first. I didn't put it there. She brought it up. She asked if maybe, now that I'm moving back, we could be a family again. And I thought, why not? Why couldn't we? Because we're divorced, because we weren't happy together, because you can't just rewind time and pretend the last 2 years didn't happen. I'm not trying to rewind time. I'm trying to move forward, with you, with our daughter, with the family we created. Nora reached across the table, her hand covering his. Just think about it. That's all I'm asking. Don't say no immediately. Take some time. Think about what it would mean for Jamie to have her parents together again. Evan pulled his hand away gently. Nora, I need to be clear about something. I care about you. I always will. You're Jamie's mother, and we'll always be connected because of her, but I'm not in love with you anymore. I haven't been for a long time. Something flickered in Nora's expression, hurt, surprise, then determination. Love can come back. If we work at it, if we try. It's not about trying harder. Evan's voice was gentle but firm. It's about the fact that we're different people now. We want different things. We've built separate lives. Have we, though? Nora challenged. You're still in the same apartment, still doing the same Saturday routine with Jamie. You haven't moved on, Evan. Neither of us has. Maybe that means something. But even as she said it, Evan was thinking about Harper. About the way his pulse jumped when she texted. About how Saturday mornings had become the center of his week, not just because of Jamie, but because Harper would be there, sitting at their corner table, with that smile that made him feel seen in a way he'd forgotten was possible. About Friday movie nights, and Tuesday dinners, and the slow, careful way they'd been building something neither of them had dared to name. He had moved on. He just hadn't realized how far until this moment. I need time to think, he said finally, which was a cop-out, and they both knew it. Nora's smile was triumphant. That's all I'm asking, time. A chance? For Jamie. For Jamie. The words were a weight Evan carried home, a responsibility he couldn't shake. What father wouldn't want to give his daughter the intact family she dreamed about? What kind of man would he be if he said no without even considering it? But when he imagined saying yes to Nora, all he could see was Harper's face in the parking lot, that careful mask hiding her hurt. He didn't call Harper that night, or the next night. He told himself he needed space to think, to figure out what he wanted without the complication of her presence clouding his judgment. But really, he was a coward. He was avoiding the conversation he knew they needed to have, the one where he'd have to choose between the safe past and the terrifying future. The text from Harper started worried. Everything okay? You've been quiet. Then concerned. Evan, you're starting to worry me. Can we talk? Then resigned. I understand if you need space. Just let me know you're all right. He sent back brief responses. Fine, just busy with work. Talk soon. But soon never came, and by Friday Harper stopped texting altogether. Jamie noticed immediately. Why isn't Miss Harper coming for movie night? She's busy tonight, Bug. But she's never too busy for movie night. You had a fight, didn't you, about Mommy? We didn't have a fight. Then why are you being weird? Why are you avoiding her? Jamie's voice rose, frustration bleeding into anger. You're ruining everything. Miss Harper was finally happy, and we were happy, and now you're making it all wrong. Jamie, I don't want to watch a movie. She ran to her room, and a moment later Evan heard her door slam. He stood in his living room, surrounded by the evidence of Harper's presence in their lives. Her favorite mug in the dish rack, the blanket she always used folded over the couch, a hair tie on the coffee table. When had she become so woven into the fabric of their days that her absence felt like a wound? His phone rang. Harper's name on the screen. For a moment he considered not answering. Then he thought about the old man in the park, about his own words to Harper months ago. We're all just walking around with our cracks, trying to hold ourselves together. He answered. Hi. Harper's voice was quiet, careful. Can we talk? Really talk? Yeah, we should. Not on the phone, in person. Tomorrow? Before our regular Saturday time? Harper, about tomorrow. Please, Evan, just please. Meet me at the cafe, 9 o'clock, before Jamie. Just us. He heard something in her voice that made his chest tight. A finality, a resignation, like she already knew how this conversation would end. Okay, 9 o'clock. The call ended and Evan sat on his couch holding his phone, feeling like he'd just agreed to something irrevocable. He didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw two versions of his future. One with Nora, safe and familiar, giving Jamie the intact family she dreamed of. The other with Harper, uncertain and terrifying and full of the kind of hope that had nearly destroyed him once before. By the time 9 o'clock rolled around, Evan had rehearsed a dozen different speeches. But when he walked into the Cornerstone Cafe and saw Harper sitting at their corner table, all his prepared words evaporated. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept either. 2 cups of coffee sat in front of her, black for him, lavender latte for herself. The ghost of their ritual performed one last time. Hi, she said as he sat down. Hi. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Harper spoke, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. I'm going to make this easy for you. I'm going to say the thing neither of us has been brave enough to say. And then I'm going to let you go. Harper, please let me. I need to say this. She took a shaky breath. I'm in love with you, Evan. I have been for months. Maybe since that first Saturday, when you said yes and the whole cafe sang happy birthday, and I remembered what it felt like to be seen, to matter. You and Jamie, you gave me a reason to keep showing up, to keep trying, to believe that maybe I deserved to be happy again. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't stop. But Jamie needs her family whole more than she needs me. And you need to do right by your daughter more than you need, whatever this is between us. I get it. I do. You have a chance to give Jamie her fairy tale, to rebuild what was broken, and I won't stand in the way of that. So that's it? Evan's voice came out rough. You're just, what? Disappearing? Walking away? I'm giving you your life back, the one you had before I crashed into it asking for a table. Harper's smile was heartbreaking. You were kind to a stranger once, Evan. You changed my life. But I can't be the reason Jamie loses her chance at having both her parents. I won't be. You don't get to make that choice for me, Evan said, anger suddenly flooding through him. You don't get to decide what I need or what Jamie needs or what's best for our family. Then tell me I'm wrong. Harper leaned forward, desperate. Tell me you're not considering getting back together with Nora. Tell me the last week hasn't been you pulling away because you're trying to figure out if you can rebuild your marriage. Tell me, Evan, and I'll stay. I'll fight. But if you can't tell me that, if there's any part of you that thinks maybe Nora is right, maybe you should try again for Jamie's sake, then I'm already gone. Evan opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. And in that hesitation, in those few seconds of silence, Harper found her answer. That's what I thought. She stood, grabbing her crutches. I love you. I love Jamie. But I love you both enough to let you go if that's what's best. She paused, one hand on the table. For what it's worth, you made me remember how to be alive again. You gave me a place to belong when I thought I'd lost that forever. Thank you for that. Thank you for the Saturdays. She turned to leave, and Evan watched her go, frozen in his chair like his body had forgotten how to move. Watched her navigate through the cafe, past the table where they'd first met, out the door into the November morning. And still, he couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't call her back. Because the truth, the terrible, complicated truth, was that he didn't know. He loved Harper, yes, but he also loved his daughter. And if there was even a chance that getting back together with Nora would give Jamie the family she'd been dreaming about for 2 years, didn't he owe it to his child to try? The cafe door closed behind Harper with a soft chime, and Evan sat at their corner table, surrounded by cold coffee and the ruins of what might have been, and wondered how doing the right thing could feel so completely wrong. His phone buzzed, a text from Jamie. "Is Miss Harper coming today?" Evan stared at the message, then typed back, "Not today, bug." The response came immediately. "Did you break her heart?" And Evan, sitting in the cafe where this had all begun, realized with devastating clarity that the answer was yes. Yes, he had broken her heart. But worse than that, he'd broken his own. Jamie didn't speak to him for 3 days. Not during dinner, where she pushed food around her plate and gave one-word answers to his attempts at conversation. Not during the drive to school, where she stared out the window with the kind of pointed silence that felt louder than shouting. Not during their usual bedtime routine where she turned her face to the wall when he tried to kiss her goodnight and said, "I'm too tired for stories." On the 4th day, Evan found her sitting on her bedroom floor surrounded by books, all the ones Harper had recommended over the months. She was reading the one about the tailless fox, tears streaming down her face. "Bug, go away." Her voice was small but fierce. "You ruined everything." Evan sat down anyway, his back against her bed. "I know you're angry with me." "I'm not angry. I'm sad. There's a difference." Jamie's voice cracked. "Miss Harper stopped texting me. She won't answer when I call." "Did you tell her she couldn't be our friend anymore?" "No, sweetheart, I would never." "Then why is she gone?" Jamie looked up, her face blotchy with tears. "Why did you let her go?" It was the same question Evan had been asking himself for 4 days. Why did he let her go? Why had he sat there frozen while the best thing that had happened to him in years walked out of the cafe and out of his life? "It's complicated," he said, which was what adults said when they didn't have good answers. That's what grown-ups always say when they're being stupid. Jamie threw the book across the room. "You love her. I know you do. I see it in your face every time she walks in the door. And she loves you too. She told me once when you went to get the car and it was just us. She said you made her remember how to be happy." Evan's chest constricted. "She said that?" "Yes. And then she made me promise not to tell you because she was scared. But I'm telling you now because you're being the most stupid, scared person I've ever met, and Miss Harper deserves better than stupid and scared." "Jamie, do you love her?" His daughter's eyes bored into him. "Really love her? Not like how you loved Mommy, where you were nice and polite, and then one day you weren't married anymore. Do you love her the way the fox loves his family in the book, even though he's different now? Do you love her enough to be brave?" The question landed like a punch. Did he love Harper enough to be brave? Or was he so terrified of risking his heart again, so paralyzed by the fear of disappointing his daughter, that he was willing to let the real thing slip away for the ghost of what used to be? "I think I do," Evan said quietly. "I think I love her more than I've ever loved anyone." "Then why are you here talking to me instead of there talking to her?" Jamie's logic was devastating in its simplicity. "Why are you letting her think she doesn't matter? Why are you letting her be alone when alone is the thing that hurts her most?" "Because I thought—" Evan stopped, forced himself to be honest. "I thought maybe you needed me to try again with your mom, to give you the family you've been dreaming about." Jamie stared at him for a long moment. Then she climbed into his lap, something she rarely did anymore now that she was almost 7 and basically a teenager, and put her small hands on either side of his face. "Daddy, I love Mommy, and I love you, and I want you both in my life. But I don't need you to be married to each other for me to have a family. I have a family. You and me and Mommy, we're a family even if we live in different houses. That's what Ms. Chen taught us in school. Families come in all shapes, and they're all real, and they're all good." "But you said," "I said I wanted my parents back together because that's what I thought I was supposed to want." That's what happens in all the movies, right? The divorced parents realize they still love each other and everyone lives happily ever after. Jamie's voice was wise beyond her years. But that's not our story, Daddy. Our story is different, and Miss Harper, she's part of our story now. Or she was, until you got scared and made her leave. Evan held his daughter close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling the weight of her trust, her wisdom, her fierce little heart that somehow understood more about love than he did. "You're right," he whispered. "You're absolutely right. I've been so stupid." "The stupidest," Jamie agreed. "But you can fix it. You can tell Miss Harper you love her. You can ask her to come back. You can be brave like the fox in the story, even though being brave is scary." "What if she won't forgive me? What if I hurt her too badly?" Jamie pulled back to look at him seriously. "Then you apologize. And you keep apologizing until she believes you. And you show her that you're not going to run away again. That's what love is, Daddy. It's showing up even when you're scared. It's saying I choose you and meaning it. Miss Harper taught me that." Something shifted in Evan's chest, like a lock clicking open. His 6-year-old daughter had just given him the answer he'd been too afraid to see. Love wasn't about choosing the safe option or the expected one. Love was about choosing the person who made you want to be braver, better, more honest, the person who saw your cracks and thought they were beautiful. Love was about choosing Harper. But first, he had one more conversation to have. Nora arrived at his apartment that evening, her smile bright with expectation. She'd been texting him daily since their coffee meeting, sending articles about co-parenting and couples therapy, dropping hints about houses for sale in good school districts, acting as if his silence was agreement, as if the life she was rebuilding in her mind was already real. "I'm so glad you called," she said, stepping inside. "I've been thinking about us nonstop, about all the possibilities. Nora, we need to talk, really talk." Something in his tone made her smile falter. "Okay, that sounds serious." They sat at his small kitchen table, the same one where Harper had helped Jamie with homework, where they'd shared Tuesday dinners and Friday movie night snacks, where pieces of their almost relationship had been quietly built over months. "I can't get back together with you," Evan said, deciding that honesty was the only kindness he had left to offer. "I'm sorry if I gave you hope by not saying it clearly enough before. But the answer is no. It's always been no." Nora's face went through a complicated series of expressions: shock, hurt, anger, and finally something that might have been understanding. "It's someone else, isn't it? You've met someone." "Yes. But that's not why I'm saying no. I'm saying no because even if Harper didn't exist, even if I were completely alone, I still wouldn't want to go back to what we had. We weren't happy, Nora. We were comfortable. And I don't think either of us should settle for comfortable when we both deserve more." "Harper?" Nora's voice was sharp. "Who's Harper?" And Evan told her about the cafe and the birthday song and the Saturdays that had become the center of his world, about how Harper had walked into their lives carrying grief like a second shadow and somehow, impossibly, had taught both him and Jamie how to hope again. About how he'd been so afraid of risking his heart that he'd let the best thing in his life walk away. When he finished, Nora was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You never talked about me like that. Even in the beginning, even when we were supposedly in love, you never looked the way you look right now, talking about her." "I'm sorry," Evan said, and meant it. "I think we both deserved better than what we gave each other. We tried to force ourselves into shapes that didn't fit, and we hurt each other in the process." "I'm in therapy," Nora said suddenly. "Did I mention that? I've been going twice a week since the divorce, and my therapist said something that's been stuck in my head. She said sometimes we cling to the past not because it was good, but because it's familiar. We'd rather have the comfortable pain we know than risk the uncomfortable growth we don't." "That sounds about right." "I think that's what I was doing, coming back here, suggesting we try again. I wasn't actually wanting you back, Evan. I was wanting the safety of what I already knew, the script I'd already memorized." She smiled sadly. "But you've gone off script. You found something real, something that scares you precisely because it matters. And I'm weirdly proud of you for that." Evan felt something unknot in his chest. "You are?" "Don't get me wrong, I'm also hurt and embarrassed and a little bit angry. But mostly I'm proud. Because the Evan I was married to would have said yes to getting back together. He would have chosen the safe option, the one that looked good on paper, even if it made him miserable. This Evan, the one who fell in love with a woman who shares his trauma and his hope, this Evan is braver than the one I knew. I don't feel brave. I feel terrified. That's because you actually have something to lose now. When we were together, we were both so numb we couldn't even feel it when we lost each other. Nora reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Go get her back. Go tell her what you told me. Go be the brave version of yourself. What about Jamie? What do we tell her? We tell her the truth, that her parents love her more than anything, that we're going to co-parent with respect and kindness, and that sometimes the best thing parents can do for their kids is show them what real love looks like, even if it's not with each other. They talked for another hour, working out details and logistics, rebuilding their relationship on the stronger foundation of friendship and mutual respect. When Nora finally left, she paused at the door. This Harper, she's good for you? She's everything, Evan said simply. Then don't let her get away. Women like that, women who can survive what she's survived and still have the courage to love, they're rare. And they deserve men who are brave enough to love them back. After Nora left, Evan stood in his apartment, surrounded by reminders of Harper's presence, and pulled out his phone. His fingers hovered over her contact information. Then he remembered what Jamie had said. Love is showing up even when you're scared. A text wasn't showing up. A text was hiding. He grabbed his keys. Harper's apartment was in Southeast Portland, a small one-bedroom above a Thai restaurant that she'd mentioned exactly once in passing. Evan had filed the information away without thinking about it, the way you unconsciously memorize details about people who matter to you. Now he stood outside in the November cold, staring up at her window, trying to gather courage. The light was on. She was home. That was something. He climbed the narrow stairs and knocked before he could talk himself out of it. For a long moment, nothing. Then footsteps, slow and uneven. The door opened a crack and Harper's face appeared. No makeup, red-rimmed eyes, wearing an oversized sweatshirt that swallowed her small frame. Evan? She sounded shocked, then wary. What are you doing here? Can I come in, please? I have things I need to say. Harper hesitated, and Evan could see her weighing whether to let him in or shut the door in his face. He wouldn't have blamed her if she chose the latter. 5 minutes, she said finally, opening the door wider. That's all you get. Her apartment was small but warm, decorated with the kind of careful intention that spoke of someone trying to build a home from nothing. Photos on the walls, her family before the accident, her as a child, a young girl who must have been Olivia. Books everywhere, art supplies scattered across a desk by the window, a half-finished graphic design project glowing on her laptop screen. This was Harper's life, the pieces of herself she'd built in the aftermath of tragedy, and Evan had been invited into it for 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes to not screw everything up. I talked to Nora, he said, deciding that honesty was his only option. I told her I couldn't get back together with her, that I didn't want to try again, not even for Jamie's sake. Harper's expression didn't change. Okay, why are you telling me this? Because I need you to understand why I couldn't answer you in the cafe, why I froze when you asked me to tell you I wasn't considering it. Evan, you don't owe me an explanation. Yes, I do. You asked me to be honest, and I was too much of a coward to do it in the moment, so I'm doing it now. He took a breath. When Nora suggested we try again, my first reaction was no. Absolutely not. We weren't good together, and going back would be a mistake. But then she said it was for Jamie's sake, and I got confused. Because what kind of father wouldn't at least consider giving his daughter the intact family she dreams about? A smart one, Harper said quietly. A father who understands that an unhappy home with both parents is worse than a happy life with them separate. I know that now. Jamie told me basically the same thing in slightly more colorful language. But in that moment, sitting across from you in the cafe, I couldn't see it. All I could think was, what if Harper's right? What if I should try with Nora? What if I'm being selfish by choosing my own happiness over my daughter's fantasy? So you are choosing Nora. Harper's voice was flat, resigned. No, God, no. Harper, listen to me. Evan moved closer, desperate for her to understand. I'm choosing you. I want to choose you. But I was so paralyzed by fear of failing Jamie, fear of disappointing you, fear of risking my heart again and having it shattered, that I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just sat there like an idiot while you walked away. Harper's eyes were filling with tears. You let me leave. You let me think I didn't matter. You matter more than anything. You and Jamie, you're my family. You're my Saturdays and my Tuesday dinners and my Friday movie nights. You're the reason I wake up excited about the day instead of just going through motions. His voice cracked. You're the person I want to choose every single day for the rest of my life, if you'll let me. Evan, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, and I know saying sorry doesn't fix it. But I'm asking you, I'm begging you, please give me another chance. Let me prove that I'm not going to run when things get scary. Let me show you that I'm brave enough to love you the way you deserve to be loved. Harper was crying now, tears streaming down her face. You broke my heart. Do you understand that? I told you I loved you and you just sat there. You let me walk away thinking I was an obligation you were trying to escape, a complication in your neat little life. I know, and I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't matter, like you were anything less than the most important person in my world. Because you are, Harper. You're it for me. You're the real thing, the kind of love I didn't even know I was capable of until I met you. How do I know you won't do it again? Harper's voice was small, vulnerable. How do I know that the next time things get hard, the next time you're scared, you won't freeze up and let me go? Evan took her hands, careful and deliberate. You don't know. I can't promise I'll never be scared or never make mistakes, but I can promise that I'll show up. Every single day I'll show up. I'll choose you over and over again until you believe it, until you trust it, until you know in your bones that I'm not going anywhere. Harper looked down at their joined hands. Jamie must be so confused, so hurt. Jamie told me I was being stupid and scared. She said you deserve better than stupid and scared. And she's right. You deserve someone who sees you and chooses you without hesitation. I want to be that person, Harper. I'm sorry it took me so long to figure out how. She really said that? A small smile tugged at Harper's lips despite the tears. She threw a book across the room for emphasis. It was very dramatic and very effective. Harper laughed, a wet, broken sound. I miss her so much. I miss both of you. This week without you, it felt like losing my family all over again. And I know that's dramatic and probably unhealthy after only knowing you for a few months, but it's true. You and Jamie, you became my people. And when you let me go, it was like surviving the explosion all over again and realizing I was still alone. You're not alone. Evan pulled her closer, and she came, collapsing against his chest with a sob. You're not alone, and you're never going to be alone again. We're your people, Harper. We choose you. I choose you. They stood like that for a long time, Harper crying into his shirt while Evan held her and murmured apologies and promises against her hair. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and her eyes were swollen, and Evan had never seen anything more beautiful. I love you, he said, because he hadn't said it clearly enough yet. I'm in love with you, Harper Lane. I love the way you listen to Jamie like she's the most fascinating person in the world. I love how you name your marshmallows and cry at children's books and refuse to use the word disability like it defines you. I love your strength and your vulnerability and the way you've survived things that should have destroyed you. I love that you made me remember how to hope. I love you, and I'm sorry it took me so long to be brave enough to say it. You really love me? Harper's voice was tentative, like she was afraid to believe it. With everything I have. And I know it's fast, and I know we've only known each other for a few months, but I also know that what we have is real. It's the most real thing I've ever felt. So yes, I really love you. And if you need time, if you need me to prove it, I will. I'll spend however long it takes showing you that I mean it. Harper looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because suddenly she was kissing him, fierce and desperate, and full of all the words neither of them had been brave enough to say until now. When they finally broke apart, Both breathing hard, Harper whispered, "I love you too. Even though you're an idiot, even though you hurt me, I love you, Evan Hart, and I'm terrified of what that means." "We can be terrified together," Evan said. "That's what love is, right? Being terrified and showing up anyway." Jamie would be proud of that definition. Jamie's a very wise 6-year-old. "Almost 7, Harper corrected with a smile. "She'll never forgive you if you forget the almost." They ended up on Harper's couch, wrapped around each other, talking about everything they'd been too scared to say before. Evan told her about the divorce, about the loneliness that had become so familiar he'd stopped noticing it, about how she'd walked into the cafe and reminded him what it felt like to be alive. Harper told him about the first year after the accident, about the physical therapy and the grief counseling, and the nights she'd spent wondering if survival was really worth it when everyone she loved was gone. "But then you said yes to a stranger asking for a table," she said softly. "And Jamie sang happy birthday. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt like maybe I could build something new. Maybe I deserve to be happy again." "You do deserve it. You deserve everything good." "So do you. We both do. We've both survived things that should have broken us. Maybe we get to choose happiness now. Maybe we've earned it." It was nearly midnight when Evan finally left, with promises to pick Harper up for Saturday morning coffee. Their Saturday, back on track, back to their corner table. At the door, Harper grabbed his hand. "Evan, thank you for coming here, for being brave, for choosing me. Always," he said. "From now on, it's always going to be you." He drove home through the quiet Portland streets, his heart feeling lighter than it had in days. When he got back to his apartment, he found Jamie still awake, sitting on the couch in her pajamas, clearly having fought off sleep to wait for him. "Did you fix it?" she asked immediately. "I fixed it." Jamie launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "I knew you would. I told Gerald the duck you would. Did you tell her you love her?" "I did." "And she said it back?" "She did." "Good. Because if she didn't, I was going to have to go over there and explain that you're worth loving even though you're sometimes stupid. It would have been a whole thing." Evan laughed, lifting his daughter and spinning her around the way he used to when she was smaller. "What did I do to deserve you, Bug?" "You showed up," Jamie said simply. "That's what you always do. You show up even when it's hard. That's why I love you, and that's why Miss Harper loves you too, because you're the kind of person who says yes when someone asks for a table." And there it was, the truth his 6-year-old daughter understood better than he did. Love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about showing up. It was about saying yes when someone needed a seat, when they needed hope, when they needed to believe that kindness still existed in a world that had shown them cruelty. It was about choosing every single day to be brave. The next morning, Evan and Jamie arrived at the Cornerstone Cafe at exactly 9:55. Harper was already there, sitting at their corner table, 3 drinks arranged just so. Hot chocolate for Jamie, black coffee for Evan, lavender latte for herself. When she saw them, her face transformed. The careful mask she'd worn that first day was gone, replaced by something open and joyful and real. Jamie ran across the cafe, literally ran, despite the signs asking patrons to walk, and threw herself into Harper's arms. "You came back! Daddy said you would, but I needed to see it with my own eyeballs." Harper laughed, holding Jamie tight. "I came back. I'm not going anywhere, sweet girl. You're stuck with me." "Good, because I have so many things to tell you about. First grade has been super dramatic this week. Emma and Sophia had a fight about who gets to be line leader, and there's a new kid named Marcus who can do a backflip, and also I learned that some butterflies taste with their feet, which is both cool and also kind of gross." Evan slid into his seat, and Harper met his eyes over Jamie's head. The look that passed between them was full of promise, of hope, of the quiet certainty that they were exactly where they were supposed to be. "So," Jamie said, settling into her chair and immediately starting to name her marshmallows. "This one's Lord Fluffington, and that one's Dr. Melt. And they're in love, but they come from different social classes, so it's very complicated." "Tell me everything," Harper said with absolute seriousness. And just like that, they were back. Not exactly where they'd been before. They were different now, changed by hurt and healing, but somewhere better, somewhere more honest, somewhere that felt like home. The weeks that followed felt like learning to breathe in a new rhythm. Harper became a permanent fixture in their lives. No longer a guest but family, her presence as essential as oxygen. She kept her own apartment. "I need my space to work," she insisted. "And besides, you two are exhausting." But most nights found her at Evan's place, helping Jamie with homework or cooking dinner while Evan pretended not to stare at the way she moved through his kitchen like she'd always belonged there. Nora moved back to Portland in January as planned, and to everyone's surprise, except perhaps Jamie's, the transition was smoother than anyone dared hope. The first meeting between Nora and Harper happened on a Tuesday evening, carefully orchestrated like a diplomatic summit, with Jamie serving as enthusiastic ambassador between the two most important women in her father's life. "Miss Harper, this is my mommy. Mommy, this is Miss Harper, who I told you about, who knows everything about books, and also about being brave when you're sad." They shook hands in Evan's living room, two women eyeing each other with the wariness of people who shared complicated history through the man standing awkwardly between them. "I've heard a lot about you," Nora said, and her voice held genuine warmth. "Jamie talks about you constantly. Apparently you're some kind of marshmallow naming expert." Harper laughed, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "It's a very specific skill set. Takes years to master. I also hear you've been good for Evan. And for Jamie." Nora glanced at her ex-husband. "I'm glad. They both deserve good people in their lives." "So do you," Harper said quietly. "Jamie loves you so much. She lights up whenever she talks about the things you do together." Something shifted in Nora's expression, surprise, then gratitude. "That means a lot. I know this situation is unconventional. Most people would expect the ex-wife and the new girlfriend to hate each other. I think we're all too exhausted from our own trauma to have energy for manufactured drama," Harper said with a slight smile. "And besides, we both love the same little girl. That's enough common ground to build on, right?" "Right," Nora smiled back, genuine this time. "Although fair warning, I'm very competitive about who gives better birthday presents. Last year I got Jamie a telescope. You'll have to step up your game." "Challenge accepted. I'm thinking dragon costume, full scale, with functional wings." "Oh, you're good," Nora said appreciatively. "Evan, where did you find this woman?" "She found us," Evan said, looking at Harper with the kind of expression that made even his ex-wife smile. "Asked if she could share our table." "Best table in Portland, apparently," Nora said. "Well, Harper, I have one request. Take care of my daughter and my ridiculous ex-husband. They're both disasters in their own ways, but they're my disasters, and I love them." "Our disasters," Harper corrected gently. "We can share." And somehow, impossibly, that became the foundation they built on. Nora took Jamie every other week as planned, plus Wednesday dinners and alternating holidays. But there were also impromptu phone calls where Harper helped Jamie pick out an outfit for a fancy dinner with Nora, or where Nora texted Harper recommendations for dealing with Jamie's sudden fear of thunderstorms. They became something that didn't have a name. Not quite friends, but not enemies either. Co-parents in the broadest sense, united by love for the same precocious 6-year-old who insisted on mediating any potential conflicts with the diplomatic skills of a seasoned negotiator. "I think we're doing this wrong," Jamie announced one evening in February. "In all the movies, the ex-wife is supposed to be mean and jealous, and the new girlfriend is supposed to be scared and intimidated, but you're all just nice to each other. It's very confusing for a narrative arc." "Life isn't a movie, Bug," Evan said, pulling her into his lap. "Sometimes the best stories are the ones that don't follow the script." "I guess," Jamie conceded, "but also it means I don't get to have any dramatic moments where I have to choose between you all, which is good because I would have cried a lot, but also I kind of had a speech prepared just in case." "You had a speech?" Harper asked, fighting a smile. "A very good one. It had 3 main points and a conclusion. I was going to use my courtroom voice and everything." "Your courtroom voice?" Evan raised an eyebrow. "It's like my regular voice, but more serious, and I stand up very straight, ma'am. Ms. Chen says I'd make an excellent lawyer, which is good, because being an independent agent in first grade is exhausting, and I'm considering career alternatives." But as winter melted into spring, the real test came not from Nora, but from the ghosts Harper still carried. There were days when grief ambushed her without warning, a song on the radio that her mother used to sing. A child Jamie's age wearing a backpack that looked like Olivia's. The anniversary of the explosion that loomed in March like a storm on the horizon. Evan learned to recognize the signs. The way Harper would go quiet, her smiles becoming performance instead of feeling, her texts growing shorter and more infrequent. On those days, he'd show up at her apartment with takeout and no expectations, ready to sit in silence or talk for hours, whatever she needed. "You don't have to fix me," Harper said one particularly bad night, curled up on her couch with tears streaming down her face while the rain hammered against her windows. "I'm not a project, Evan. I'm always going to have days like this. Days where I miss them so much I can barely breathe." "I know," Evan said simply, holding her hand. "I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to sit with you while you hurt. There's a difference. Most people can't handle it. The grief, they want me to be over it, to move on, to stop bringing down the mood with my tragic backstory. Those people are idiots," Evan said firmly. "Your grief is part of you, Harper. It's the proof of how much you loved them, how much they mattered. I would never ask you to hide that or diminish it or pretend it doesn't exist. Your family deserves to be remembered, and you deserve to have space to miss them." Harper looked at him with something like wonder. "How are you so good at this?" "I'm not. I'm making it up as I go. But I love you, and that means I love all of you. The healed parts and the still healing parts, and the parts that might never fully heal. That's what signing up for a real relationship means. It's not just taking the easy, happy moments, it's showing up for the hard stuff too. Even when the hard stuff is me sobbing on my couch at 2 in the morning because I saw a photo of a family that reminded me of mine. Especially then. March 15th arrived, 2 years since the explosion, and Harper spent the morning at the cemetery where her family was buried. She'd asked to go alone, and Evan had respected that, even though every instinct screamed at him to follow, to protect, to fix. But Jamie had other ideas. "We should make her a remembering box," she announced over breakfast. "A what?" "A remembering box. Ms. Chen told us about them. When someone you love is gone, you put things in a box that remind you of them, pictures, special objects, letters. And then when you're sad, you can open the box and remember the good times instead of just the missing times." Evan stared at his daughter, once again awed by her wisdom. "That's a beautiful idea, Bug. What should we put in it?" They spent the afternoon crafting. Jamie drew pictures, Harper's family at the cafe, Olivia playing with a toy sword, Harper's parents reading books. Evan found quotes about grief and love and survival, printed them on good paper, arranged them carefully. They found a wooden box at a craft store, painted it with stars and birds, the tattoo on Harper's wrist, the symbols of flight and freedom. Inside, they nested the drawings and quotes, along with a letter Jamie insisted on writing in her careful first-grade handwriting. When Harper returned that evening, exhausted and red-eyed, she found them waiting on her doorstep. "We made you something," Jamie said, presenting the box with all the ceremony of a knight presenting a sword. "It's a remembering box. For your family. So they're always with you, even when you're missing them." Harper took the box with trembling hands. When she opened it and saw the contents, the drawings, the quotes, Jamie's letter that read, "Dear Harper's family, thank you for making Harper. She's the best. Love, Jamie." She completely broke down, sinking to her knees on her doorstep while sobs racked her body. Evan moved to comfort her, but Jamie held up a hand, stopping him. Instead, his daughter sat down next to Harper on the cold concrete, put her small hand on Harper's back, and just waited. Let Harper cry. Let her grieve. Gave her the gift of presence without pressure. When Harper could finally speak, she pulled Jamie into a fierce hug. "This is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever done for me. Thank you. Thank you for remembering them, for making them real to you, even though you never met them." "They're part of your story," Jamie said simply. "And you're part of our story. So that makes them part of our story too. That's how families work, right? Everyone's story gets braided together until you can't tell where one ends and another begins." Harper looked at Evan over Jamie's head, and he saw in her eyes the same realization that was dawning in his own heart. This was it. This was the moment when they stopped being tentative, stopped hedging their bets, stopped protecting themselves against potential heartbreak. This was when they became real. That night, after Jamie was asleep, Harper and Evan sat on his couch and talked about the future for the first time, not in vague terms or careful hypotheticals, but in concrete plans and scary commitments. "I want this to be permanent," Evan said. "I want you in my life, in Jamie's life, forever. I know it's fast. I know we're supposed to take things slow and be sensible, but I don't want to be sensible. I want to be brave. I want to choose you every day for the rest of my life." "I want that too," Harper whispered. "But Evan, you need to understand, I'm never going to be fully healed. There's always going to be a part of me that's broken, that misses them, that carries this weight. Are you sure you want to sign up for that?" "Harper, listen to me." Evan took her face in his hands. "Your cracks are beautiful. They're the gold in your kintsugi. They're the proof that you survived something unsurvivable, that you're stronger than anything life threw at you. I don't want you healed in the sense of becoming someone different. I want you exactly as you are, broken and brave and more beautiful than anyone I've ever known." "I love you," Harper said, the words coming easier now, more natural. "I love you and Jamie so much it terrifies me, because I know what it's like to lose everyone you love in an instant. I know how fast everything can disappear, and the idea of losing you, you're not going to lose us. And even if something did happen, even if the worst occurred, wouldn't you rather have loved us and lost us than never loved us at all? Isn't that the whole point? We don't avoid love because it might hurt. We choose love because it's the only thing that makes the hurt worthwhile." Harper kissed him then, deep and desperate and full of all the promises they were too scared to voice. When they broke apart, she whispered, "Move in with me," or "Let me move in with you. I don't care which. I'm tired of going home to an empty apartment. I want to go home to you and Jamie. I want to be there for bedtime stories and breakfast chaos and everything in between." "Yes," Evan said without hesitation. "Yes, absolutely yes." They decided on Evan's apartment. Bigger space, better for Jamie, and Harper admitted she'd never loved her place above the Thai restaurant anyway. Over the next few weeks, they merged their lives in cardboard boxes and careful negotiations about shelf space. Harper's books joined Evan's engineering manuals. Her art supplies took over half the dining room table. Her clothes filled the closet next to his. The apartment slowly transformed from Evan's place to their place, marked by the beautiful mess of two broken people building something whole. Jamie was thrilled, naturally. "Does this mean Harper is like my bonus parent now? Because I think that's what they call it when your dad has a girlfriend who lives with you and acts like a parent but isn't technically your mom. A bonus parent. Which is good because I already have two regular parents, so having a bonus one means I'm basically winning at the family thing." "Is that how it works?" Harper asked, amused. "According to first-grade social politics, yes. Emma has a stepdad who she calls her bonus dad, and everyone agrees it's very cool. I'm thinking of starting a club for kids with bonus parents. We could have meetings and everything." "What would you discuss at these meetings?" Evan asked. "Important stuff. Like how to make sure your bonus parent knows they're appreciated, and what to do if your regular parents and bonus parents all show up to the same school event, and you have to manage the seating arrangements so nobody feels left out. It's very complicated. I'm thinking of creating a chart." But as spring bloomed into summer, Evan realized there was one more step he wanted to take, one more commitment he wanted to make. He'd been carrying his grandmother's ring in his pocket for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment, the perfect moment, to ask Harper the question that would make permanent what they'd been building since that first Saturday morning. Then he realized there was only one place it made sense to do it. On a Saturday morning in late July, 8 months after that first encounter, Evan arrived at the Cornerstone Cafe early. He spoke to the manager, made arrangements, and waited nervously at their corner table. Harper arrived at exactly 10 o'clock, Jamie practically vibrating with barely contained excitement beside her. "Why do you look so nervous?" Harper asked as she sat down. "And why is Jamie grinning like she knows the nuclear launch codes?" "I don't know anything," Jamie said unconvincingly. "I'm just happy it's Saturday. Saturdays are great. This Saturday is especially great. The greatest Saturday of all Saturdays, one might say." "Jamie," Evan warned, "I'm just making conversation." Harper looked between them suspiciously. "What's going on?" Evan took a deep breath. This was it. The moment where he stopped being careful and started being completely, recklessly honest about what he wanted. 8 months ago, you walked into this cafe and asked if you could share our table. You were trembling and brave and carrying more pain than anyone should have to carry. And I said yes. One word. Yes. And my whole life changed. Evan, Harper's voice was already shaking. You became my best friend, my partner, my family. You taught Jamie about being brave when you're scared. You taught me about showing up even when it hurts. You made me remember what it feels like to really love someone. Not just go through the motions of a relationship, but actually love them with everything I have. Evan stood up, and Harper's eyes went wide as he dropped to one knee beside their corner table. The same table where this had all begun, where a stranger had asked for a seat and received a family. Harper Lane, you didn't just share my table, you shared my life. You gave me a reason to be braver, to try harder, to show up more fully. And I want to spend the rest of my life sharing everything with you, Saturday mornings and Tuesday dinners, and every moment in between. I want to be the person who sits with you when you grieve and celebrates with you when you're happy, and reminds you every single day that your cracks are beautiful. He pulled out the ring, his grandmother's, simple and elegant, perfect for Harper's small hands. Will you marry me? Will you let me love you for the rest of our lives? Will you be my family, officially and permanently, and in every way that matters? Harper was crying, hands pressed to her mouth, eyes bright with tears and joy and disbelief. The entire cafe had gone quiet. All conversation stopped, everyone watching this moment unfold at the corner table. Yes, Harper whispered, then louder. Yes, yes, of course yes. The cafe erupted in applause. The same cafe that had sung Happy Birthday 8 months ago, now cheering for an engagement. Jamie was jumping up and down, practically screaming with joy, and Evan was sliding the ring onto Harper's finger, pulling her into a kiss that tasted like tears and coffee and the promise of forever. When they finally broke apart, Jamie launched herself at both of them, wrapping her arms around their legs. We're going to be a real family. I mean, we already were a real family, but now we'll be a legal family. I can't wait to tell everyone at school. Emma is going to be so jealous. Her bonus dad didn't propose in a cafe with everyone watching. I'm glad we meet your standards, Harper said, laughing through her tears. Oh, you exceed my standards. This is like top-tier bonus parent behavior. I'm going to write a case study for my club. Over the next 6 months, they planned a wedding that reflected who they really were. Not some Pinterest-perfect fantasy, but something real and honest and full of the people they loved. They chose to get married at the Cornerstone Cafe because where else would they do it? The place where they'd met, where they'd built their Saturday tradition, where Evan had proposed. Nora helped with the planning, which surprised no one more than Nora herself. I'm doing this for Jamie, she insisted, but Harper suspected there was more to it than that. Suspected that Nora had found something freeing in letting go of the past, in embracing the complicated family structure they'd built. You're good for him, Nora said one afternoon while they were choosing flowers. Better than I ever was. You see him in a way I never could. You gave him Jamie, Harper said. That's the greatest gift anyone could have given him. We gave him Jamie, Nora corrected, past tense. You're giving him the future. That matters too. The wedding was scheduled for December 15th, the same date Harper's family had been taken from her, transformed now from a day of grief into a day of joy. It was Harper's idea, her way of reclaiming the date, of refusing to let tragedy own it forever. Are you sure? Evan had asked when she suggested it. That's a heavy date to carry. I don't want our anniversary to always be tinged with sadness. It won't be, Harper said firmly. Or maybe it will be, a little bit. Maybe I'll always think about them on our anniversary. But that's okay. They're part of my story, and you're part of my story, and all the stories get to live together. That's what love is, making space for all the complicated feelings at once. So on December 15th, under soft lights strung through the Cornerstone Cafe, with mismatched chairs borrowed from a dozen different sources and flowers in mason jars on every table, Harper Lane and Evan Hart got married. Jamie walked between them down the makeshift aisle, wearing a purple dress with a sparkly butterfly belt and carrying a basket of rose petals that she threw with theatrical flair. Nora sat in the front row taking photos and crying quietly. The cafe regulars filled the remaining seats, people who'd watched this love story unfold over Saturday morning coffee, who'd seen the broken pieces come together into something beautiful. Evan's vows were simple. You asked if you could share my table. I'm asking if I can share my life. Every morning, every challenge, every joy, I want to face it all with you. You taught me that broken things can be beautiful, that grief and love can exist together, that showing up is the bravest thing we can do. I promise to keep showing up every day for the rest of our lives. Harper's vows made everyone cry. You didn't just give me a seat, you gave me a place to belong. You and Jamie, you reminded me that family isn't just blood, it's choice. It's choosing to show up, to see each other, to love each other, even when it's hard. 2 years ago, I lost everything. Today, I'm gaining everything. I choose you, Evan Hart. I choose us. I choose this beautiful, complicated, perfectly imperfect family we're building together. When they kissed, Jamie cheered so loudly that several people jumped. Then she announced to everyone present, I'm the reason this happened. I was the one who said we should let Harper sit at our table. So basically, I'm a matchmaker, which is very impressive for someone who's still 6. You're almost 7, Harper and Evan corrected in unison, which made everyone laugh. The reception was chaos in the best way, dancing and laughter and toasts that ranged from sentimental to hilarious. The manager of the cafe had made a special hot chocolate bar in honor of the occasion, with a dozen different flavors and toppings. Jamie appointed herself Chief Marshmallow Namer, giving each one an elaborate backstory that she shared with anyone who would listen. At one point, Evan found himself standing with Nora, both of them watching Harper dance with Jamie, their daughter's face bright with joy. Thank you, Nora said quietly, for finding someone who loves her like this, who sees her the way we do. Thank you for being okay with it, for making this easier than it had to be. We're good at a lot of things, you and I. Being married to each other wasn't one of them. But co-parenting? Creating a family that's bigger and weirder and more complicated than anything we planned? We're excellent at that. We really are, Evan agreed. Later, as the reception wound down and guests started to leave, Harper pulled Evan aside to the corner table where it had all begun. Someone had placed a small plaque on it at Evan's request, reserved for the Hart Lane family. Hart Lane? Harper asked, touching the plaque gently. Or Lane Hart. I don't care which, but we're hyphenating, both of us. And Jamie too, if she wants. We're all in this together. Harper kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. I like it. The Hart Lane family or the Lane Hart family. Either way, it sounds like home. Because it is home. Wherever we are, at this table, in our apartment, anywhere. If we're together, it's home. Jamie appeared then, tugging on both their hands. Can we do a family photo at our table for posterity? That's a word Ms. Chen taught us. It means for when we're old and want to remember stuff. They posed at the corner table, Evan and Harper on one side, Jamie between them on the other, all of them holding mugs of hot chocolate topped with elaborate marshmallow arrangements. The photographer captured it. A family born from grief and kindness, from a question asked and answered, from the brave choice to keep showing up even when showing up was terrifying. That photo would become the centerpiece of their home, a reminder of where they'd started, of the journey that had brought them together, of the simple truth that sometimes the best things in life begin with the smallest acts of courage. A year later, Harper would discover she was pregnant. 2 years later, they'd welcome a son, Oliver, named after Olivia, a way of honoring Harper's sister while creating new life. 3 years later, they'd add a daughter, Caroline, named after Evan's grandmother, who'd given them the engagement ring. Jamie would become the kind of big sister who took her job seriously, teaching her siblings about marshmallow naming and the importance of Saturday morning traditions. Nora would meet someone too, a kind, gentle teacher who appreciated her drive and her directness and didn't need her to be anyone other than who she was. The family would expand further, becoming more complicated and more beautiful, proving that love doesn't divide when you add people, it multiplies. But all of that was still to come. On this December night, in a cafe transformed by love and light, and the courage of broken people choosing to heal together, 3 people sat at a corner table and celebrated the family they'd built from nothing. Can I say something? Jamie asked, climbing onto the table, even though she'd been told repeatedly not to. Everyone, can I have your attention? The remaining guests turned, smiling indulgently at the precocious flower girl who'd stolen the show all night. 2 years ago, my dad was sad because him and my mom got divorced. 1 year ago, he met Harper because she asked to share our table. Today, they got married and we're a family. And the thing I want everyone to know is, Jamie's voice got serious, taking on her courtroom tone. The thing I want everyone to know is that families come in all shapes. Some families look like what you expect, and some families look like what you don't expect. But they're all real, and they're all good, as long as people choose each other and show up and remember to be brave, even when they're scared. She looked down at Evan and Harper, her face bright with the wisdom of someone twice her age. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for proving that broken things can become beautiful things if you just give them time and love and extra marshmallows. The cafe erupted in applause again, and Jamie bowed like she'd just finished a Shakespeare monologue. Evan lifted her down, and Harper pulled them both close, and for a moment the three of them just stood there. A father who'd learned to hope again, a woman who'd survived the unsurvivable, and a child who'd taught them both what love really meant. I love you, Harper whispered to both of them. I love our weird, complicated, perfectly imperfect family. I love that we found each other. I love that you said yes when I asked for a table. I love you too, Evan said. Both of you, my girls, my family, my everything. And I love both of you, Jamie declared, even though you're sometimes embarrassing and you don't always understand first-grade politics and Daddy makes terrible jokes. I love you more than all the marshmallows and all the hot chocolate in the whole world. Outside, Portland rain had started to fall, gentle and persistent, the kind of rain that washed everything clean. Inside, at a corner table in the Cornerstone Cafe, a family born from tragedy and kindness held each other close and watched the rain trace patterns on the windows. This was how healing happened. Not all at once, not perfectly, but slowly and messily and with the help of people who saw your cracks and called them beautiful. This was how families were built, not from bloodlines or legal documents, but from choice, from showing up, from saying yes when someone asked for a table and discovering that what they really needed was a home. Harper Lane had walked into this cafe 2 years ago carrying grief like a second shadow, convinced she'd lost everything that mattered. Tonight, she left as Harper Lanehart, surrounded by more love than she'd thought possible, proof that endings could become beginnings if you were brave enough to keep walking through the door. Evan Hart had offered a seat to a stranger, thinking it was a small act of kindness. Tonight, he understood it was the most important decision he'd ever made. The yes that had changed everything, the choice that had given him back his life. And Jamie Hart Lane, almost 7 years old and already wiser than most adults, understood what her parents were only beginning to grasp, that the best stories don't follow the script. The best stories are the ones where people choose each other, where broken becomes beautiful, where a question as simple as, "Can I share this table?" becomes the first line of a love story that changes everyone it touches. They went home together that night, to the apartment that was no longer his or hers but theirs, to the life they'd built from scattered pieces, to the future that stretched ahead full of Saturday mornings and Tuesday dinners and all the ordinary, extraordinary moments that make a family real. And every year on their anniversary, they'd return to the corner table at the Cornerstone Cafe. They'd order hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. They'd remember the day Harper asked for a seat and Evan said yes. They'd honor the family Harper lost and the family they'd found. They'd teach their children about being brave when you're scared, about showing up even when it's hard, about the fact that kindness can build a family where none existed before. Because that's what this story had always been about. Not romance, not tragedy, not even healing. It was about the simple, radical act of seeing another person and choosing not to look away. It was about saying yes when it would be easier to say no. It was about building something beautiful from the broken pieces life hands you. It was about a table shared, a life shared, a love that proved the old man in the park right. We're all walking around with our cracks, trying to hold ourselves together. And the worst part about being broken is forgetting that other people are broken too. But the best part, the absolute best part, is finding the people who see your cracks and love you not despite them, but because of them. The people who understand that broken things can be beautiful, that survival is its own kind of courage, that families are built from choice and love and the willingness to keep showing up even when showing up is the hardest thing in the world. Harper had asked if she could share a table. Evan had offered her a family. And together, with a precocious 6-year-old teaching them both about marshmallow naming and the importance of being brave, they'd proven that the simplest acts of kindness can rewrite your entire story. All you have to do is say yes. All you have to do is show up. All you have to do is remember that strangers are just family you haven't had cocoa with yet. And sometimes if you're very lucky and very brave, those strangers become the people who save you, who see you, who remind you that you're worth loving even when you've forgotten how to love yourself. This was their story, a story that began with a question and ended with an answer that would last a lifetime. Yes.